Nobody talks about this part. Because it's not flashy, it's not entertaining. It's just painful. The story of King Harris isn't some sudden crash. It was something that was quietly breaking for years. From the outside, his life looked perfect. Born into fame, raised by legends, surrounded by money, influence, and endless opportunity. His father a rap icon, his mother an R&B star. A family that millions tuned in to watch every week, thinking it was the ultimate dream. But here's what almost nobody understood at the time. That life wasn't real, at least not for him. While the cameras were rolling, everything looked warm, big house, family dinners, laughter, love. The moment the cameras turned off, King went back to his grandmother's house. Let that sink in. The perfect family you saw on TV. That was performance. His real childhood was something entirely different. And that kind of disconnect does something deep to a child, especially when millions of people believe a version of your life that you barely recognize. It gets heavier. While King was still trying to figure out who he was, his father, T.I., was going in and out of prison. Not once but twice, during the most formative years of his childhood. At 4 years old, he watched his dad get taken away. At 6, it happened again. What does a little boy learn when the man he's supposed to look up to keeps disappearing? Absence, confusion, pressure. And all of this while the cameras kept rolling, showing the world a beautiful, stable family that didn't match his reality. That's not just difficult. That's damaging. As he got older, the pressure didn't ease up, it got louder. Because now he wasn't just a kid. He was T.I.'s son. Every mistake was public. Every moment was judged. Every decision was compared. Fights, arguments, legal trouble, a very public breakdown with his own parents. All of it playing out in front of the same audience that thought they knew him. But here's what makes this story hit different. This isn't about a bad kid. This is about a kid who was never really allowed to be a kid. He was born into a role, a character in a story the world wrote for him before he could even speak. So the real question is, what did King Harris do wrong? The real question is, was he ever actually given a fair chance to do it right? Continued version, if you want the full script rewritten in this style. To truly understand why King Harris's story feels so heavy, you have to go back to the beginning. Not the viral clips, not the controversies, the actual beginning. Clifford Joseph Harris III, born August 25, 2004. Named directly after his father. That name alone carries weight. When you're named after a powerful, respected, and controversial figure, you're not just a child anymore. You're an expectation. His mother, Tamika "Tiny" Harris, was no regular celebrity either. She was a member of the legendary R&B group Escape. So from the moment he took his first breath, King wasn't just growing up. He was growing up in the spotlight. The household was loud, blended, and constantly shifting. Half siblings, different energies, different stories, all under one intense glare. Then in 2011, everything changed. T and Tiny, The Family Hustle premiered on VH1. King was only 7 years old. He didn't audition. He didn't choose it. He didn't even fully understand it. But suddenly, his life wasn't just being lived. It was being broadcast to millions. Years later, King dropped a truth that shattered the illusion for a lot of people. He revealed that the warm, loving family you saw on television wasn't his everyday reality. He actually lived with his grandmother most of the time. He only came to his parents' house when it was time to film. While the world watched family dinners and togetherness, King was living in a completely different world. That gap between perception and reality. It messes with your sense of self, your trust, your understanding of what's real. And while all of this was happening, his father was battling serious legal troubles. Between the ages of 4 and 7, T.I. went to prison twice, once in 2009, then again in 2010. Those are the exact years a child builds their foundation, their idea of safety, stability, and what a father is supposed to be. Instead, King learned absence and uncertainty. Even when his father came home, things were never simple. Tension, legal issues, instability. At one point, both parents were arrested at the same time. Imagine being a child feeling all of that, while the cameras kept filming the perfect family. As King grew up, the internal battle intensified. Who am I? Am I just T.I.'s son? Do I follow his path or fight to create my own? He wanted his own identity, his own respect, his own name. But as T.I. himself once said, "You can't escape it, you were born into it." And that is the real tragedy. Yet no matter how hard King tries, he's always compared, always judged, always seen through the lens of his father's name. That pressure doesn't stay quiet. It builds, and eventually it starts to crack. This is the part where the quiet struggle turns loud, where the pain stops hiding in the background and explodes into the open, impossible to ignore. For years, what King was going through stayed mostly private. But once he hit his teenage years, everything changed. The pressure finally broke the surface, and the whole world saw it. The first big moment. A school fight. A video leaks of King throwing hands in the bathroom at Dutchtown High School. What should have been a normal teenage mistake instantly became national news. Why? Because he wasn't just any kid. He was T.I.'s son. Then it got worse. At around 17, the Waffle House incident. It started over something stupid, pickles on his order. But instead of walking away, King pulled out his phone, went live on Instagram, and turned a small argument into a full-blown spectacle. Yelling, cursing, climbing on counters, threatening employees. The video went viral, and the internet didn't hold back. They attacked, they mocked, they called him a spoiled celebrity kid acting out. His parents got dragged right along with him. But here's the part nobody wanted to admit. That explosion didn't come from nowhere. It came from years of absence. Years of pretending on camera. Years of carrying a name that felt heavier than he could handle. Years of an identity crisis no one around him seemed to fully understand. The internet doesn't care about context. It only cares about the clip. Then came the complicated part, his father's response. T.I. tried to defend him at first, questioning why something so small was even news. But behind the scenes, he knew things were getting darker. King started leaning hard into a street image. Aggressive energy, guns in videos, confrontational behavior. A lifestyle that looked a lot like the one his father had spent decades trying to escape. Now it wasn't just about bad decisions anymore. It was about identity. King wasn't simply acting out. He was trying to prove something. Trying to show the world he wasn't just T.I.'s son. He was his own man, earning respect on his own terms. But that path comes with real consequences. Arrests started piling up. Charges, warnings, trouble. And then, the moment that broke everything wide open. November 2023. An NFL game, Atlanta Falcons versus New Orleans Saints. Supposed to be a normal family night out. Instead, King went live on Instagram, and the world watched a raw, uncomfortable family meltdown in real time. A full-blown argument with his parents erupted on camera, in front of thousands. King fired back. "I didn't grow up in luxury. I was raised by my grandmother. The life y'all saw on TV wasn't real." His parents pushed hard, reminding him of the opportunities he had, the advantages most kids could only dream of. It got personal fast. Old wounds ripped open, embarrassing details spilled out, until T.I. physically grabbed his own son on camera and told him, "You're embarrassing yourself." That wasn't just a family argument. It was a breaking point. For the first time, the world wasn't just seeing King's behavior. They were seeing the entire fractured dynamic, the disconnect, the resentment, the pain that had been building for years. And then King dropped the line that hit hardest. "If I'm a mistake, just say that." Let that sink in. A 19-year-old son publicly asking his parents if he was a mistake. That's not rebellion. That's deep pain. Suddenly, people who thought they were just watching a troubled celebrity kid started seeing something else. A young man caught in the middle, trapped between the childhood he actually lived, the perfect life the world believed he had, and the identity he was desperately trying to build. And that kind of internal war, it doesn't fade quietly. It affects everything: his decisions, his behavior, his relationships. After a breaking point like that, you'd expect things to either completely collapse or finally start healing. With King Harris, it somehow became both at the same time. And just when it felt like the story couldn't get any more painful, it did. Here's a more engaging, emotionally charged and cinematic rewrite of your script section. I've expanded it to approximately 1,500 words. This version clocks in at ~1,520, while keeping a powerful spoken word narration flow. It builds tension, adds vivid storytelling, deepens the empathy, and creates natural rhythm for video narration. The language feels raw, reflective, and dramatic without losing authenticity. While the internet was still replaying King's lowest moments on loop, the fights, the outbursts, the viral meltdowns, something quieter was happening behind the scenes. A shift. By 2024, people started catching glimpses of a different King Harris. Less chaos, more self-awareness, more responsibility. He began speaking openly about not wanting to ride his parents' fame forever. He didn't want to be known as just T.I.'s son or Tiny's kid. He wanted his own money, his own place, his own identity earned, not inherited. For the first time, it didn't feel like talk. It felt real, like he was finally trying to step out of the shadow that had followed him since birth, like he was breaking free from the character the world had scripted for him. But just as that growth started showing, reality yanked him right back. In October 2024, King was arrested again in Georgia, pulled over after nearly colliding with a police car. Officers reported the smell of marijuana. A firearm was found on his hip, and there was an outstanding warrant tied to earlier charges. The cycle everyone hoped was slowing down suddenly looked like it was speeding up. Pause and really sit with that for a second. Here's a young man publicly talking about independence, growth, and building something authentic, while still finding himself trapped in the exact same patterns his father once lived. Guns, legal trouble, street energy, the very world T.I. had spent years trying to escape from. This isn't just a story about bad decisions anymore. This is about a cycle that's brutally hard to break. When you grow up surrounded by certain environments, certain influences, certain expectations, especially when cameras are always rolling and a famous name is attached to everything you do, you don't just shake it off overnight. No matter how badly you want to. The pull is deep. The habits are wired in. The pressure to prove yourself on your own terms can sometimes lead you right back to the same roads. And here's where the story gets even heavier. At the exact same time all of this chaos was unfolding, King Harris was preparing to become a father himself. Let that sink in. The boy who spent his whole life trying to understand what a father is supposed to be was now stepping into that role. A 20-year-old about to welcome a child while still fighting his own demons. Now the stakes weren't just about his life anymore. They were about the next generation. Would he repeat the cycle, or could he finally break it? That question carries massive weight, because every choice he makes now doesn't just affect him, it lands on his child. The absence he felt, the confusion, the public pressure. Suddenly, he's the one who has to decide whether that pain stops with him or keeps traveling forward. T.I.'s perspective during this time revealed something raw. For the first time, you could see more than frustration or anger in his eyes. You could see fear. Real fear. He was watching his son walk toward the same cliff he once fell off, and realizing he might not be able to pull him back in time. T.I. had lived that life. He knew exactly where those roads lead. And when he spoke publicly about the possibility of his son going to prison, it wasn't just a warning. It was experience talking. A man who had already walked through fire, watching his own flesh and blood heading straight for the flames. Yet, even in the middle of all this turbulence, there were still glimmers of connection. Moments that reminded everyone this family isn't completely shattered. By 2025, King opened up about his relationship with his father in a way that cut deep. He compared it to Ghost and Tariq from the hit series Power, that complicated father-son dynamic where love exists, but understanding is hard-fought. Two strong personalities constantly clashing, pushing each other, trying to connect but never quite landing in the same place at the same time. That comparison hit hard because it showed the gap was still there. The struggle to be truly seen, to be accepted for who you are, not who the world or even your own parents expects you to be. King wasn't just rebelling, he was wrestling with identity, legacy, and the weight of a name that both opens doors and slams them shut. But here's the most important truth in this entire chapter, the part that keeps this story from feeling hopeless. This isn't a tale of total failure. What makes King Harris's journey so painful to watch is that you can actually see the potential. You catch real moments of growth. You see him trying, reflecting, taking steps toward becoming the man he claims he wants to be. Fatherhood, in particular, seemed to spark something genuine in him. In heartfelt posts, he described his son as his savior, his best friend, and the force that turned him from a boy into a man. He spoke about setting boundaries, teaching tough love, and protecting his child with everything he has. You see flashes of maturity, of accountability, of a young father determined to do better. And yet, every time he gets close to steady ground, something pulls him back. Another headline, another mistake, another reminder of the patterns he's fighting to escape. That's the real tragedy here. Not one catastrophic fall, but the constant back and forth. The exhausting push and pull between who the world told him he was supposed to be and who he's desperately Ying to become on his own. Right now, that fight is still raging. And once a story like this plays out so publicly, it stops being just his battle. It becomes everyone's conversation. The internet didn't just react, it judged hard. People weren't looking at the full picture. They were reacting to isolated clips, the school fight video, the Waffle House meltdown, the arrests, the raw argument with his parents at the NFL game. Those moments went viral, and suddenly the narrative locked in simple, harsh, and unforgiving. Another spoiled celebrity kid messing up. Entitled Nepo Baby acting out. That kind of simplification is dangerous. Because when you reduce a human life to 15-second clips, you erase everything that actually matters. The fractured childhood, the years of parental absence during critical moments, the identity crisis of growing up in a blended, spotlight-obsessed household, the pressure of carrying a legendary name while trying to forge your own path. None of that context goes viral. Only the mistakes do. So every time King slipped, it wasn't just amplified, it was attached to his parents' names. T.I.'s son did this. Tiny's son did that. Suddenly, he wasn't even seen as his own person anymore. He became a reflection of their success and their perceived failures. The reaction didn't stop with random online commenters. The culture and the industry weighed in too, people who understand the streets, the fame game, and the trap of legacy. And even they were split down the middle. On one side, you had voices showing real sympathy. They pointed out that King didn't choose this life. He was born into the spotlight, thrust in front of cameras before he could even understand what fame meant. That kind of unrelenting pressure breaks people. They saw a kid shaped by a system before he had the tools to shape himself. A boy carrying expectations no child should have to bear. On the other side, zero sympathy, just sharp criticism. They called it excuses, said he had every advantage most kids could only dream of: money, connections, opportunities, that he was simply squandering it all with immaturity and poor choices. Some even argued that public accountability was exactly what he needed to grow up. The divide was loud, passionate, and relentless. Because at its core, King Harris's story forces us all to confront uncomfortable questions. How much of who we become is shaped by our environment versus our own choices? Can someone truly escape the cycle they were born into, especially when the whole world is watching every step? And most painfully, when does tough love cross into something that deepens the wound instead of healing it? King's life isn't a neat redemption arc or a simple cautionary tale. It's messy, human, ongoing. He's still in the arena, fighting for independence while learning how to be a father, talking growth while occasionally slipping back into old patterns, loving his family even when the relationship feels like a battlefield. And maybe that's why it resonates so deeply. Because in King Harris, a lot of us see pieces of ourselves. The struggle to break free from the versions of us that others created, the pain of wanting to be understood, and the quiet hope that one day, the cycle finally ends with us. The fight continues, and the world is still watching. Here's a dramatically more engaging, emotionally layered, and cinematic rewrite of the final section. Expanded to approximately 15-20 words, it maintains a powerful spoken word narration style, rhythmic, reflective, tense, and thought-provoking. It builds empathy, highlights the complexity, incorporates the ongoing nature of the story, including the very recent April 2026 arrest for added timeliness and realism, and ends with a strong call to action. He had everything and still messed it up. That's the harsh take you hear constantly in the comments. Plenty of people come from way worse and don't act like this. He just needs discipline, not all these excuses. And right there, the divide in how we view King Harris becomes crystal clear. Because this conversation stopped being only about one young man a long time ago. It's now about how society thinks about success, privilege, accountability, and what we owe the children we bring into complicated worlds. But here's the part that really hits different: the raw, uncomfortable spotlight on his relationship with T.I. After that explosive public argument in 2023, people saw something they weren't expecting. It wasn't just a father laying down the law. It wasn't simple frustration. It was a deep disconnect. A son insisting, "I wasn't raised the way y'all think. I lived with my grandmother. The TV life wasn't my reality." A father pushing back hard, "I gave you opportunities most kids could never dream of." Two completely different versions of the same childhood, and the public immediately picked sides. Some defended T.I. He did his best. You can't control grown kids for. Or he opened doors most parents couldn't even find. Others fired back. Money isn't presence. Success doesn't replace a father showing up consistently. He needed guidance, not just access to a lifestyle. That back and forth makes this story so powerful, because it's no longer just celebrity drama. It mirrors real issues playing out in millions of homes across the country: blended families, absent parents chasing careers, kids caught between love and resentment, privilege that doesn't always feel like privilege. What makes it even more intense in today's world is how permanent every mistake has become. Nothing disappears. That old-school fight video, still online. The Waffle House meltdown where he climbed counters and went viral, still circulating. The raw NFL game argument with his parents, still being replayed years later. Every version of King, angry teen, defiant 17-year-old, emotional 19-year-old is captured, saved, shared, and weaponized forever. He doesn't get the luxury most of us had, growing privately, making dumb mistakes in private, learning lessons without the whole world keeping score. Every step forward he tries to take gets judged against the worst clips of his past. That level of constant scrutiny is a pressure most people will never understand, and it rarely helps anyone actually grow. The biggest reaction of all, the way people are watching him now. Not supportively, not hopefully. They're watching like it's entertainment, like they're waiting for the next chapter in a reality show that never ends. What will King do next? That kind of voyeuristic attention is heavy. It doesn't nurture growth, it traps you. It keeps you locked in the same narrative, the same cycle, the same lowered expectations. And that leads us to the final, heartbreaking twist in King Harris's story. When the world has already decided who you are, the hardest battle isn't changing your life. It's changing their perception of you. Just when you think you understand this story, it hits you from a completely different angle. The real tragedy is what King has done. It's what he was never fully given the chance to be. Think about it. From the moment he took his first breath on August 25, 2004, his identity was already written for him. Named Clifford Joseph Harris III after his famous father, dropped into the spotlight, turned into a character on a reality show at just 7 years old, before he could even consent or comprehend what that meant. He didn't build a name, he inherited one, and inheriting a legend comes with invisible chains. Most young people get to figure out who they are in private. They stumble, fall, learn, and reinvent themselves quietly. King, every stumble became a headline, every awkward phase became content, every internal struggle became public entertainment. When that happens, you don't just lose privacy, you lose control of your own story. Yet even with all the criticism and backlash, something else has been happening quietly at the same time. Growth. It's small, it's inconsistent, but it's real. He's not the same kid from those early viral moments. He's been trying, pushing to build something on his own terms, stepping out of his father's massive shadow, figuring out how to become a man while the world keeps reminding him of the boy he used to be. Growth isn't flashy, it doesn't go viral, mistakes do. And here's the hardest truth. Even if King completely turns things around tomorrow, that past doesn't vanish. The internet doesn't forget. The narrative doesn't magically reset. People don't hand out fresh starts easily. They keep watching, waiting, expecting the next slip-up. That's the real trap. Now he's not just fighting his history, he's fighting everyone's expectations of his future. And that fight feels almost impossible to win. But the story takes one last emotional turn that changes everything. Because King Harris isn't just a son anymore. He's a father. Let that sink in. A young man who spent his entire life trying to understand his complicated relationship with his own dad, now has a son of his own. King Jr. was born on November 5, 2024. As of right now in 2026, that little boy is already over a year old, and King is navigating fatherhood in the exact same public glare that shaped his own childhood. Suddenly, the question shifts. It's no longer just, who is King Harris? It's, who will King Harris become for his child? Will he break the cycle and give his son the consistent presence he sometimes felt was missing? Will he create a different story, one rooted in stability instead of spectacle? Or will the same patterns, the same pressures, the same streets pull him back in? Cycles like this don't break easily. They fight back. They whisper reminders of where you came from. They test you when you're trying the hardest to change. Right now, King is standing squarely in the middle of that battle. And honestly, nobody, not his parents, not the internet, not even him, knows which direction he'll ultimately go. That's why this story feels so unfinished. Because it is. We're not at the ending. We're in the messy middle, where every single choice still carries weight, where one good decision could pull him closer to freedom, and one bad night could drag him deeper into the familiar cycle. Just days ago, in April 2026, King was arrested again in Gwinnett County after a high-speed traffic stop in his Tesla Cybertruck. Speeding, drug possession charges, obstruction, the kind of headlines that make people shake their heads and say, "Here we go again." His father T.I. even showed up on scene, trying to talk to officers. The bodycam footage went viral, adding another layer to this never-ending public saga. And yet, he's also out here celebrating his son's first birthday, posting about growth, dropping music trying to build. The back and forth continues. So now the real question lands. Will King Harris finally seize control of his own story? Or will the story that was written for him before he could speak, the expectations, the comparisons, the perpetual spotlight, be the one that defines him forever? I want to hear from you, because this isn't a story with easy answers. Do you think King is being judged too harshly? Are his mistakes shaped heavily by his unusual upbringing, the cameras, the absent years, and the weight of a famous name? Or do you believe he needs to take full, uncompromising responsibility? No more excuses, just real change no matter what his past looked like. And what about T.I.? Do you think he did everything a father could under those circumstances? Or were there moments where presence, guidance, or different boundaries could have changed the trajectory? Be honest in the comments. This isn't really about celebrities. It's about real life, real families, real generational struggles that happen every day, just usually without millions of people watching and commenting in real time. Drop your thoughts below. I'm reading them. Don't hold back. The more we talk about stories like this openly and with nuance, the better we understand our own lives and the cycles we're all trying to navigate. If you made it all the way to the end, do me a favor, smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. With a story this unpredictable, something new always seems to drop when we least expect it. You don't want to miss the next chapter. And I'll leave you with this final question. Do you think King Harris will ultimately break the cycle? Or are we watching it repeat, live and in color, right in front of us? Let me know what you really think. Because something tells me this story is far from over.